Sales, it's really hard. And that's why this week on Insights as a Service, we've got another subject matter expert joining us. It's Harriet Mellor, the Director and Sales Success Coach at Your Sales Co. Harriet, good morning.
Good morning. Hi, Brendan. Thanks for having me.
Very welcome. Now, full disclosure, we've been working with you for a couple of months now. How did we initially find you? I think Andrew actually found
LinkedIn.
You via LinkedIn, a good example of using LinkedIn effectively.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So look, run us through your story, what you do now, how you got to this point. Let's go.
Okay, wonderful. I'll take the floor.
Please.
So I actually fell into IT. It's one of the most common, I think, stories of falling into IT. I was an events organizer, went into a large IT company back in the UK. And as they say, the rest of it is history. And I had to learn a lot about the industry and about the tech, that goes behind it. But really the driving force behind it was the difference that I could make as being part of that company, but also what the tech could do for the companies as well. And so it was really driven by those outcomes. And then I guess really like the business changes that came with it. The tech was just part of it. And so I was able to translate really quickly what tech meant in really simple forms to businesses. And that was really where my career progressed from in there. And then I moved into Australia and continued the journey and moved more so into cybersecurity and risk, because I was really drawn into that because of how interesting it was and how complex it was. And for me, and I know one of your mottos with Lightwire is about making things simple. And that was really what I did, was I translated the tech into simple, plain English for everybody to be able to understand. And that was really kind of where that 15 years took me. And then at the end of that, I decided, as I came to a close on that, I wanted to make a difference with other businesses and reach more rather than just the company I was working in. I wanted to go out there and help more. So I launched Your Sales Co. and now work with brands and businesses all over the world, focusing on their sales strategy, whether they're in tech or in accounting and legal and architectures. So, it's a real varied mix, but my heart is definitely still in tech, and hence why we're still working together.
Yeah, right. So when you first got into tech, or in fact through that sort of MSP telco experience, were you always in sales, or did you have a period where you were sort of more hands-on and then sort of transitioned into sales?
I was always focused in sales when I went into that business, but I did a lot of, we built data centers. I did a lot of project management. I got to know every single department. I was extremely lucky in the company I was in. I worked directly with the CEO. So anything that wasn't working, they just chucked me in. My nickname was H-Bomb. So they just used to throw me in and I would just fix things and then come back out. So I had a really varied experience and exposure to the industry really early on. And I definitely credit a lot of where I am now because of what they enabled me to do.
Right. Okay. So our focus in this podcast is on MSPs, and I know you've got a lot of experience both inside and outside of MSPs working with them. What are some of the most common sales mistakes you see MSPs making?
Good question.
Mistakes,
I mean, again, like same with mistakes, wins, like different challenges, and so many I could list. And I think with regards to mistakes is probably just not having a strategy. And especially in this, in this era of just chaos when it comes to IT at the moment, and everyone's scrambling for these deals and opportunities. If there isn't a clear strategy or a clear structure and a funnel to take your clients through, you're almost just stabbing in the dark. And I think one of the other challenges as well that I'm going to speak to, just to take two challenges, is that, if we've got opportunities coming in where people are inquiring about your services or, the products that you can resell, is that we still need to qualify them too. It's not just a dead set deal because they've come to you. Often they're price shopping or they're trying to find a little bit more about the product or service. And therefore you need to spend a little bit more time with them, understanding them, nurturing them, getting them through to the outcome that they desire while supporting them through it. And so I think that really just ties back into that mistake of not having a clear defined process. And therefore then you'll see less wins.
So if it's strategy and process, what does the sales strategy start with? Is it a positioning piece, understanding who you actually are best able to serve and how you convert that into a clear pitch, or is it something other than that? Like, do most MSPs actually understand
Yeah.
where they're really designed or best able to deliver something meaningful or valuable?
I would say yes. Often there's a really clear sweet spot. So, is it in local government? Is it in federal government? Is it in specific industries? And that's when they work really well because, I've worked with another MSP that was focused specifically on legal. And they then speak they speak specifically to legal companies. So it means their marketing and their messaging and their stories link back to a common industry. So it's not kind of, oh, here's something about legal, here's something about, government and federal, etc., because they're all so different. And when you can speak to a single challenge or a single problem or a single outcome, that's where you start. That's where you build the foundation with that client, and then you build on top of that. So the success comes from the wins and the outcomes and the reduced risk and, whatever these may be. We're able to then, speak further to that. So I would say, yes, majority do understand where their sweet spots are. Whether they speak to them in that process that I just outlined, maybe not. But having a strategy where you know who you can speak to, or at least replicating your ideal clients would be where I would start. If you've got no idea, what your strategy looks like or who you should be targeting, I would then say, look at replicating. If you've got 3 or 4 ideal clients, how do you copy and paste them time and time and time again? Where are you finding them? How are you speaking to them? And what problems are you solving for them?
Okay. So when we think about sales strategies for MSPs, how have you actually seen those evolve, whether it's, 5 years or 10 years? What are MSPs typically more aware of, or what have you seen the high performing MSPs change in more recent times to really get ahead?
Great question. I would say partnering with higher level services. And what I mean by that is that, if we take, Australia as the example, that, there's some of these huge companies in Australia and there's some of these smaller. So we've got the small, medium enterprise scale. And whereas previously a small MSP could only really deal with a small to medium business, they can now deal with the enterprise businesses when they look at collaborating. So collaborating with a larger provider that are providing maybe managed services, they could add on a specific service that they are really good at. So really niching down. And I've seen that work really well with providers that let's say, add on a reporting capability with a service to the likes of something like Palo Alto or Sophos. And that works really well because they're then able to say, well, look, you provide the big package. We'll come in and provide this tiny little layer. But that's where you get your foot in the door and you prove yourself and then you move through. Whereas I think previously it was, if you were a big MSP, you could deal with big companies. If you're a small MSP, you deal with small MSP, small companies. And that's certainly starting to change.
Does that come back to that whole differentiator? So um, when we look at what can be seen, or certainly elements of the MSP space are quite commoditized, there's a real need to go to market with something that makes you stand out. So when someone is, like you said earlier, looking, whether they're sort of shopping around or they're just kind of checking the market against an incumbent, that you actually have something on your website or that you can put forward that differentiates you. How important is that as part of the sales strategy, and how have you seen it done to differentiate in what is a pretty commoditized space?
Yeah. And so I think with regards to this whole, like, let me email you something and here's, a PDF, I think that's dead, if not dying. And so, because again, I find that that's a stalling tactic for clients that are shopping around, that they'll just say, oh, that sounds great. Send me something, via email.
Totally.
And, that's like, okay, cool, you're not interested. So, it's really understanding that whilst you're in that meeting or on the phone, is getting really specific of like, what do you want to see? If they are adamant that you need to send something, great, what would you like me to send you? Asking a really simple question like that. But when we look at the other side, that actually we should be delivering the content of what it is that we can offer in those meetings. And having multiple meetings is okay. So if you're having that initial meeting to scope it out, if there's something that you believe that you could support them in doing, give them something they can go off and try. Give them a trial. Give them a top tip of something to go away and use whilst you build out that proposal, and then share that then back with them. Because when we do it in that way, rather than just shoving information at them, they've got so much information that everything that you're going to send them, they could Google. everything you're going to send them they could find on your website or on somebody else's website, just with a different brand name at the top. So you want to differentiate yourself by sending something different or not sending something at all. And I guess, like, are we going to talk about the software that I use to kind of share different things?
We should totally do that. Yeah.
Should we link into that?
Yeah, let's
I know.
do
I'm
it.
sure that was a question coming.
Yeah.
So I guess really with that, with the content that we're delivering, is delivering it in a different way. And so one of the ways that I recommend using and way that I use myself is in video, and in recorded content as well. So, and what I mean by that is that if you've got a proposal, and again, in tech, proposals are long and they are full of dot points and full of scope and inclusions and exclusions and, hardware and software. So, those pages can go on. I've seen them. And so how do we make that different? How do we stop them scrolling right the way down to page 32 to look at the price? Because they've gone straight to price. Can I then determine whether this is of value to me or not? Which is what happens. So to change that up by doing a video, now I use Loom as a software to be able to explain what it is that I'm putting forward. I did this with you, and I know we had a conversation about Loom, but again, that wasn't a very long proposal, was it? But it's still 2 pages, but it's writing and it's bullet points and it's boring. So
it personalizes the hell out of it, right?
It does, yeah, it does, and it brings it back to a conversation. Yeah, not just me, shooting over a PDF. And so within that, what I do is provide the proposal, the PDF, where then the software will then record that on my screen and I can speak over that. It can also have the option to have a thumbnail video, or it can just all be my face and the thumbnail can then be the proposal, whichever way round you want to do it. And then I explain through what I've included in the proposal, why I've included it, use any of the words or specifics you want to get out of the engagement or the work that we're going to be doing together, and then wrapping that up at the end. So it's still a 2 or 3 minute video. It explains everything you need to know. It highlights the key features of what it is that I'm putting forward. And therefore, you've now got the information with my words put to it, not just blank text. And so again, that's really an example of how you can deliver proposals. You can deliver information in a different way. There's also a really good software called Bonjoro, which is allows you to do video with an email. So if you're doing a follow-up, to any of your clients and you want to do it more personally, but they're not answering the phone and they're not, replying to your LinkedIn message, then, you could send them an email with a video that just explains, who you are, what you do, maybe something specialist around their industry or a problem that you can solve. Keep it short, to the point. But again, nobody's doing this. So if you do that now, if everyone's listening to this and now does it, then maybe we'll have more people, which will be wonderful. But, if you are the only person in your industry doing this, that is going to set you apart from the rest that maybe have more of a well-known name or have something different about them. You've just differentiated yourself.
It's interesting. I came at that initial question from a product or services standpoint, how do you differentiate? But it's really interesting when you talk about differentiating yourself through the sales process, even if you've got an alignment almost of, whether it's desktop support or, licensing, etc., firewall of some sort, the engagement itself differentiates you. And if you can, as you say, use the applications, the tools, have the personality element to it, because again, people buy from people, that in itself is a pretty strong differentiator. And yeah, I know that the Loom video, it worked well for me because you get so many emails and it can be a wall of text and you're immediately disengaged and so go, okay, I'll get back to that later. But when you've kind of just got a succinct video where it's, you can immediately see how long it is and it's not super long, so you're like, okay, great. That's positive. Yeah, it is. It's just a unique way and it stands out from all the other requests you've got coming through.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Totally
And again, like you said, if it's 27 minutes, it wouldn't have the same impact. But, if you keep it under that 5-minute mark where possible, it's going to have a bigger impact.
Yeah, Romain tells me the same thing about podcasts. Keep it short. That's what he tells me, but it's often hard. Yeah. So the question I've got next for you is around that whole marketing sales piece. Essentially, where does sales start, marketing stop, and what is the role of marketing? Because my experience is that in many MSPs, marketing is sort of the last add-on. It's they get the technical elements set, they get the project set, they get the desktop support set, then they get some sales in, which typically starts off by being the owner operator, and then it expands into a proper sales team, and then marketing's kind of I don't know, it's the last consideration. So for you, how should MSPs think about marketing, and what role does it play in sales?
Yeah. Okay. So with marketing, for me in MSPs, it has to be education and education, education, education. Just if that's if that's all you can think about when it comes to marketing, you'll be more successful again than anybody else that's doing it in a slightly different way. And the reason for that is that I find that often people, these businesses are not often going out there Googling, managed services or laptop suppliers. They are waiting because there's so many people out there that do it. They're either working with somebody already or they've been recommended somebody by Dave in the pub who's going to, sort them out. And so when it comes to marketing and sales sit extremely close together. I talk about it as yin and yang. Together we need a little bit of both. But I do also say that with sales, we actually don't need marketing if it's done properly. And so when it comes to the marketing element, is that if we educate and share content, not just sharing, here's a new laptop, here's the features, contact me if you want to know anything more, that's not marketing. That's just pitching without an audience. Whereas if we're looking at marketing in a different way, which is education. So, what is this new laptop? Why is it going to make a difference? What sets this laptop apart from anybody else and any other range in the world? And why should you consider it for your business? If you deliver it in that way, that's your sales messaging coming through your marketing. And so I think that, LinkedIn marketing is really, really beneficial. It's really working at the moment, especially in range of videos, images, text. Sharing content, if you've seen something awesome about a product that you resell, sharing that with a meaningful caption is really key. And again, this all ties into marketing, although it sounds quite simple and it's, could be done on the fly, for example, it's still marketing because you're still marketing what it is that you can deliver. But marketing can come in so many different streams. But for me, it's about having the education piece first, because if you're a business owner, often you don't understand tech. Often you don't understand, the difference between this laptop and this laptop, or the difference between having a firewall and not having a firewall. So explaining it in a way that means something to them and trying to come back to the three things, which is, how do I make you more money? How do I save you money? And how do I save you time? If we can speak to those in marketing, then again, that sales messaging will come through. And that's what business owners want to hear, especially as well when we're thinking about the different types of roles that are being played, the roles that are following you on LinkedIn or that are, part of your email marketing campaign. Again, coming back to education at those different levels, will know who you're speaking to and how, therefore, you should deliver that message. And I guess then coming into that sales component is that sales should always sit alongside your marketing efforts, because the idea behind marketing is to generate leads. And so if we can generate leads effectively, it's now our job or your job to be able to convert those leads into paying clients. And so if you've done a great job in marketing, you're getting these leads coming through, then it's now your job to convert them. And so by having a sales funnel, a sales process to take them through, we'll see you have better results and return on those leads, on that investment you've made on your marketing, than it will do if you don't have a sales opportunity. And that really kind of comes back to that mistake question at the beginning of to the biggest mistakes that I see is that actually not qualifying when we get those inbound leads. We just take that as they want to work with us. We give them the pitch, we give them the proposal, and we move on. Whereas actually we add in that piece around understanding, uncovering, asking the questions that nobody else is asking, uncovering the information they don't think they want to give us, but we're going to ask them anyway, and then delivering something that means something to them in terms of an outcome or a challenge overcome.
There's a bit to unpack there, because I think at its heart, I think marketing's job is to make sales easier. But I think a lot of it comes down to how you define success for your marketing team. So, like, if you've got marketing qualified leads as a metric, I think that's kind of horrible, because a marketing qualified lead is someone filling out a form on your website or someone, clicking free trial. But whether or not that is the people you want to be selling to whether it's a genuine interest or just because you've gated something, some content that actually is valuable, but you've thrown a gate in front of it, that person's nowhere near ready to make a purchasing decision, but they actually wanted that thing, but the marketing team's like, yes, we got another one. The reality is I think it needs to be about sales qualified leads, and which means getting quality content like you've said out there that provides value but enables the sales team to have a conversation to qualify it, and then the number of actual sales qualified leads, e.g. they are actually looking to make a purchasing decision, they are actually qualified as someone your business is well placed to sell to provide value to, so it's not a waste of your time pitching and presenting, knowing full well there'll be others that can better suit that candidate or that client's need. So it's I think it's about metrics, making sure that it's focused around the sales outcomes, not the marketing outcomes, because by themselves, they don't mean a lot. But yeah, there's also that piece around that content. I think a lot of MSPs probably, depending on the size, find it hard to justify the time and effort that goes into creating that content. And unless it's valuable, people, I think, are so bombarded now with content. I mean, we're doing this and as a company, we do a lot of things, right? So it's like there's a lot to read and listen to and watch and blah, blah, blah. But that can be a blocker. But depending on the size of your customers, you're saying that, for the more nimble MSPs, the smaller MSPs, their customers might not even know one laptop from another. But if you're selling to the bigger ones, the high end of town where they've got the internal IT teams, they're very, very skilled, the need to develop really high quality content that differentiates you from the other high quality content becomes even more important. So I think, I don't think you can escape it. At each stage, you've got to find a way to create that content to position your business as a thought leader in your space for the people you're trying to sell to. But yeah, a lot of words, but that's my my quick take on marketing and sales interaction.
Yeah, and it's totally right. And again, even just talking about the way that you position a product or a service, is that through your marketing is one thing, but you can continue doing that through your outreach, through your relationship building. So when you're building those new opportunities, when you're having a conversation with them, explain to them the difference, or understand what their take is on it, and give them your opinion. So it becomes, that two-way conversation, not just the MSP telling the client or potential client that we're right and this is the best laptop, working out, what are you using at the moment? How are you finding? What have you used previously? You'll then understand a little bit more about where they're coming from, and therefore can pitch and position a product in a slightly different way.
I was just thinking something else that's kind of creating that convergence between marketing and sales is the marketing of the salespeople themselves. So where they're creating their personal brands to be seen as either just fun people to deal with, smart people to deal with, having a point of difference in whichever way, and using LinkedIn or other social media platforms to do that. That's a really interesting space. How do you see the personal brand evolving in that sales role, and what part how important is it to stand out as an individual? And I guess just to add one more thing to that, to get you thinking about it, is like, how do you make sure you don't come across like a dick? Because you've got this whole, you can take it too far and you will alienate some people. So how do you get that right, and how important is it?
Okay. Whoa, so many questions. Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's okay. It's all good. You have to keep me on track, make sure I answer them all. So I think I'm going to answer your last question first. So with regards to the going overboard, I think with anything that we do, when we stand out and we stand in our own right as a thought leader in whatever it is that you want to speak about, is that you are going to have some people that look at you and like, that's absolute rubbish. I don't agree. They're a bit of a dick, in your own words. So there is, there are going to be.
Look, you threw that back at me. To quote you.
Yeah. So I think that within that space, yes, we are going to have people that are going to turn off and disengage, and that's fine, because again, and I can go off on a whole other conversation about, clients that aren't right for you, clients that don't align. And there'll be clients that suit different members of your team. So, you might have somebody in your team that's really out there and giving all this information that somebody else is not that, in tune to. But you might have somebody else that's a little bit quieter. And so again, it comes back to your personal brand, that however you want your personality to shine it, because people are gonna be attracted to that. And again, it's about standing out in a crowd. Because if we look at, again, if I use LinkedIn, because it's such a powerful platform, that LinkedIn is a space that you could say is oversaturated. You could say there's so much content out there. actually it's not that saturated when we look at the comparison with Facebook and Instagram. It's totally, the total opposite. And I've got clients that just do Instagram that I'm like, get onto LinkedIn. Your clients are on LinkedIn. They're either an employer or an employee, therefore they're on LinkedIn. So, I think there's a lot more to come on LinkedIn. I think for where we are right now, there is certainly an opportunity to stand out. And so you should definitely do that. And whether that is in terms of showing your personality in fun videos, doing reels, doing memes, whatever that may be, shine that way. Whether it's something else that's maybe toned down a little bit more and it's delivering videos or content or sharing other people's content, again, do it in your own way so that you build your own personal brand. Because as you said right at the beginning, is that people buy from people, and that couldn't be more true in this age. And so, standing out is really key. Delivering content of value is really key. And so I think that, again, coming back now to your last question, again, with regards to, how do we not go too far, is always, whenever you're posting anything that's different or anything at all, I want you to think about what's the value for the people watching it. So, will my clients enjoy this piece of content? Will they resonate with this piece of content? Will they comment on it? Will they tell their friends? Will they download it? Will they read it? If you think about all of that and the answer is yes, post it. So you're, whether it's silly and stupid and laughing and loud, post it. If it's, very professional and to the point, but that your ideal client's going to resonate with it, post it. Because we don't really care about what anybody else is looking at on LinkedIn or on Instagram or on YouTube or Facebook or wherever you want to post the videos. It's about the people that want to work with you, that will catch something, catch that one video, catch that one line and go, that resonates with me. And I think really just to kind of give an example on that, I had somebody reach out to me the day before yesterday, and we actually had a call yesterday, and she caught one snippet of a video of a post that I did that I call bullshit on, these things. And it was like blockers putting in front of you before you actually go out and sell. And she said, I felt heard and I wanted to speak to you. And she doesn't follow me. She just came across that one post that resonated with her and she contacted me. So to give that example is that if I didn't post that because I was afraid I was going to piss off 500 other people, then I wouldn't have got that one inquiry, and who knows how many more will come from that. So just giving that example that although it may feel silly or feel strong or feel like you may, annoy a few people, post it anyway. As long as the majority or as long as your ideal clients will still resonate with that, post that.
I think that last sentence is super important. Your ideal clients. I think sometimes it's the context or maybe the copy that goes with a post, particularly if it's video or if it's a photo, just making sure it comes back to, well, what are you actually trying to achieve? Like if you just, I don't know, if you're enterprise focused or you're mid-market focused, the copy that goes with it, if you're talking about a particular product, and you go, if your business or your team or whatever, just making sure that it just ties back to ultimately what you're trying to achieve. Having said that, sometimes, you don't have to try and achieve a specific sales outcome with it. It's about cadence and consistency as well, potentially. I know with Kat in our team, I was just making the point the other day to her that she released a really good video that I really liked. And it was a bit of a snippet around 3CX and just, how to, just a couple of highlights, I guess, about how to use it. And that was great. And then at the end, it's like, if the messaging just didn't quite appeal to the channel that we work with. And it's like that's just the last little part. So just tying it back sometimes to the overarching aim, or leaving that bit out sometimes where it's not specifically relevant. But I think there's just and maybe I'm not articulating this very well, but there's a point at which the personal brand and the company goals have to intersect, and it's just kind of making sure you're thinking that through as you come up with a plan, and maybe not. Like, I don't know how you sit on this, but maybe not shooting too much from the hip with your personal brand. Actually sitting down to think, well, who am I, and how am I best heard, and what are the best interactions I have, and when people describe me positively, what kind of words they use, and maybe if you've ever gone through like the 360 review process where a bunch of people in your business are asked kind of, how they see you, that can be quite enlightening as well. Certainly for me, I give me plenty of things to work on, but that's the whole thing, different thing. Let's talk about LinkedIn though, because you use it really well. How do you see MSPs using it well? And when you are using it, what kind of metrics do you need to keep an eye on to actually figure out whether or not well, you are doing it well? Like, how do you define well?
Great question. And I think that, the defining it well comes back to a little bit like with what you were saying with regards to marketing and, sales metrics. We can look at so many different areas. And at the beginning, I would say focusing on, your views and your interactions and engagement, because engagement is key. We could keep putting something out there. People read it and like it. It resonates with them and they comment, or, they want to tell you how great they found that piece of content. And so for initially, I would be looking at, let's try and increase your numbers to do with views, to do with engagement, and maybe even people reaching out and connecting with you. But really using it as a platform for that education piece. So again, it's a way that you can always come back to in your sales conversations. So if you're having a meeting or a call, and you start talking, let's use 3CX as an example, that we start talking about 3CX and how it can benefit businesses, you can then refer back to a post that you did on LinkedIn. Because when you do that, you're bringing in a second or third piece of content, therefore a different voice, even though it might be your voice that did the video, it's still showing something else, and it shows the people that liked it or commented on it, and therefore where it stands within the world of 3CX or within the world of tech and communications. So for me, I would be looking at the post views and the engagement, and then what comes from that. You can go through and look at any of the posts that you've done and just look at posts and look all the way down to then see then how many people have watched. And there is further reporting in the back end, but I mean, that would get into a very boring podcast if we continue talking about reporting, but there is heaps of reporting in the back end with LinkedIn. So I would say just to kind of play around with that, there's lots of free tips on YouTube on how to look at the reporting as well. But I would be focusing really on the engagement that comes from it, and then start looking then the more you do it, looking at it then, once a week, once a month, and seeing then what resonates, because you'll then be able to go back and show that, for example, a picture with you in it outperforms a piece of text or outperforms a white paper. So do you then put a picture of you with the white paper, for example? So you start then being able to see what resonates with people that are watching, and then be able to deliver more of that. And the other question was that about how to drive more business through LinkedIn.
Yeah, I mean, like what works particularly well, I think was my question.
Okay, so what?
I think.
Okay, great, thank you. I get overexcited talking about LinkedIn.
Cool. Actually, I'll just jump in there. I'll give you 2 seconds to think that through, because I think just on metrics, because this always fascinates me, is I've spoken a lot in the past about vanity metrics, right? Like the things that people love to track, but ultimately don't mean much by themselves. And it's really interesting for me when sometimes they feel like vanity metrics, but they kind of do matter. Like if no one's engaging, you have no impact. It literally achieves nothing. So the clicks, the views, the engagement, they do matter. But ultimately, like when you are repping a brand on LinkedIn or socials, when you're repping yourself, if you can walk into a conversation with someone and they already know of you, if they already know of your brand, you get to jump a whole step of the sales process. You don't have to qualify the company. You don't have to educate them on why they should be talking to you, why you're potentially a good fit. You can go straight to what problem can we help you solve? What are we here specifically to address? And I think that is, for me, it was a really hard to define metric. It's very hard to measure that, but it comes off the back of those vanity metrics.
Yes. Okay. Yep. And I definitely agree with that, because again, if you've ever met somebody and if you'd look at it from the other side, is that if you've met someone, you're like, oh, I followed them on LinkedIn, or I've seen them before, I've seen their posts, or I've seen that, Brendan's always sharing that person's content, and you meet them, you've got an instant talking point. You've got an instant, something to talk about. So again, you skip that bit of, hi, my name's Harriet and your name is what, and, what do you do and how do you do it? But again, turning that around, that if you're meeting somebody that you're aware of, or you're meeting someone and they're aware of you, definitely that does skip that part. But again, if we're meeting somebody for the very first time, is that it's having a really clear set of questions or conversation techniques to use. And it's less about you and more about them. And so if this kind of, I guess, really bridges us into networking, that, if you're at this networking event, or if you're at a coffee event and you meet somebody, how are you going to handle that opportunity is really important. And so again, coming back to your personal brand and how you want to be seen and how you want to be heard, I guess, will come into then how you're going to deliver your message or find out a little bit more about the person you're meeting. So, asking questions about, who they are and what they do and what they specialize in, And then like one of the last things, maybe who do they work for? And, do they have any challenges in that area? And then what do you do? Because people love talking about themselves. And, I'm sure you notice this from being on podcasts that people can talk and talk and talk, especially when it's something about them or something they're really passionate about. So if you're ever meeting anybody, get them to talk about them, get them to talk about what they love, get them to talk about, what they think the next big thing is in tech. And they won't stop talking. And from that, you'll build a stronger relationship because they're like, oh, she was really interested in what I had to say, or, ask them great questions, or, I was able to really explain this, and you can then give your position on it without being like, hey, I'm Harriet and I'm a sales coach and I do this. It changes, the conversation. That's what I teach a lot in how to run meetings, which I know is a totally different topic. But, in terms of that meeting is how can I help you? Not about, you don't really care who I work for or what I do or what my role is. It's about whether I can help you support that challenge. And then once we understand that supporting of the challenge, it comes back into brand and position and support and who I've helped before. So same thing, if we tie that right the way back into LinkedIn, is that when we're delivering that content, we're building a brand for ourselves linked to the brand that we work for, whether that's your own company or whether that is somebody that you're working for, because they are one and the same. You become part of each other's brand. And so I think with the metrics with LinkedIn is definitely looking at that engagement, because what resonates with others, but it's looking then at how can you then take that into a conversation. So how could you then reach out to the person that likes your content all the time? And how do you turn that into a message that turns into a meeting or a Zoom catch up or just a connection maybe at this point? And I would be looking at what it is that you're sharing allows you to do that.
That's interesting too, because at some point it needs to turn into in-person comms and like comms. Don't know why I had to go all like marketing and abbreviate there, but like basically have a meeting with someone, sit down, talk. And when you do that, you need to nail it. So that we should totally get you back and we should talk about meetings and how to actually structure that for a separate episode. That'd be really interesting.
Yeah.
But it has just turned my mind towards the fact that in-person networking is basically a thing again. I've been to an event in Sydney last week and got another one coming up, and it's everyone's so pumped to be back actually talking to people. So now it's about, well, okay, again, how do you make sure those are worthwhile? How do you structure the conversations, as you've said, to actually make it enjoyable for the other person, but also lead to some potential outcomes? So yes, let's talk more about that next time. I have other questions. I know something you wanted to talk about, which is sales roles themselves, how they're structured. Do you have a hunter? Do you have, AMs and BDMs split? How do you see? Let's take an example. Let's make this specific. Let's say you've got an MSP, say 50 staff. They got a sales team. Let's say they're probably going to have 3 to 5 people in the sales team. How would you structure that team? What do you think they should look like?
Oh, that's putting me on the spot there, Brendan. Good question. Okay, 50 people and they've got 3 to 4 salespeople. So I would then say, so have they got clients? Let's really map this out.
Yes. Yeah, let's say if they got that sort of those sort of numbers, I'm guessing their revenue is probably 10 mil plus. They'd have to be.
All right. So, okay, cool. So I think within that, then I would be saying, so there's a couple of ways you can structure it. So one is that you could have everybody that's a BDM, so a hunter in those words, but they also manage their own clients. So that's, a really easy model to implement, and that can be changed at a later date. So that is that you go out, everybody's targeted with going out and finding new business, and then they bring that business in, and then they nurture that business until, beyond and beyond and beyond, while still going out and finding new clients. Now that's great, but they'll get to a point where they will cap out at the amount of clients that they've got, and therefore will just become an account manager until some of them drop off, because again, you've got projects versus contracted managed service providers, etc. So I think with that being said, that would be a great model. You could then just bring on more salespeople, and therefore they will continue to sell and account manage. In other ways,
you've described what we have at Lightwire, so totally makes sense.
Yeah, your model, and it's great. And the reason why I'll just talk to the reason why that works is because often, again, people buy from people, and so when we have engaged with a new client, they love what it is that we've done. They love how we've transacted. They love how we've delivered, and they like the way that we communicate and meet and support ongoing. So that's great. And then therefore we can bring on new clients, bring them in. We know that pool of clients. So again, when we talk about that strategy of replication of ideal clients, where does that come from? So that works extremely well. And then you can then keep adding on more salespeople. The other model, and this will work if you've got somebody who's very good at sales and outbound, sales and generating those opportunities versus somebody that is quite happy within their existing fleet. So again, they still have to sell because we're still upselling, cross-selling and managing and maintaining that client, but they're done in two separate ways. So what then happens is the salesperson identifies the opportunity, sells to them, brings them on board, and then hands them over to the account manager. And again, then you can have multiple. So you could have maybe one account manager to begin with and 2 or 3 salespeople. And then as then those salespeople grow, the account management team grows. Now, again, that works well depending on the skill set of the people that you've got. One of the potential risks at that point is if you've got account managers that haven't been trained in sales, then you are not going to have a flourishing existing account database, because selling into existing accounts is often harder or more challenging than selling newly, because you're having to go in and think of new things to always be talking about and giving them ways and means to purchase from you time and time again. And so if they haven't got that skill set to sell, then it can be quite a challenging way of looking at it. And again, a lot of people that go into account management, or when they come into a new role and it's sales and account management, they talk about being account managers. I've been there. Like, I didn't want to sell. That was, just to be very clear, sales was not something that was on my agenda when I was, a teenager being like, I'm going to go out and be a salesperson. And that's something we have to, deal with in all different forms of business and roles that we manage in whatever industry you're in. But, so for me going into these roles, I was like, I'll be an account manager, absolutely, because I get to deal with clients that already work with us and I just get to make sure they're happy. Who doesn't want to do that? But ultimately, there is still a goal and a target associated to your existing clients. And therefore, we need to make sure that is met and that they are supported in the same way that a new client would be. Otherwise, we neglect them with all the other opportunities for them to become more secure or have better communication services or upgrade their hardware, because the account managers aren't doing their job because they haven't been trained in that way, because they just think they're there just to nurture and make sure they're okay.
And I guess that depends too, probably, again, what their definition of success is. Is it churn rates? Is it portfolio revenue growth? What is it, right?
Yes.
And that's where I think metrics have a really important part to play in driving behavior, and they've got to be based exactly around what the owner or the executive team expect from those roles. It's got to be sort of start from that and work backwards. But I always wonder that, or worry that, if you have a straight up hunter going out getting new business, then handing off to an account manager once either the project's initiated, completed, whatever, it just feels quite transactional to me. And I really pull away from that kind of a model. I really am about, I guess, relationship selling. You particularly in an MSP space, and it's the same in telco, where it's not a one-off transaction. You're not selling and walking away. You're selling, and then you own the outcomes, and they're going to be repeated because it's going to be more and more sales. So I feel like if you're the person engaging, you also need to be the person who takes a stake in the success, the ongoing success of that. So that's where I kind of struggle with that straight up hunter versus account management split.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, it's what you feel comfortable with within the business, what's working. And again, if you've got a small team, my recommendation will always be to sell and account manage within that one role. And then that can evolve as it needs to. Again, another way really to talk about that comfort level of how do we support those existing clients is that a lot of companies don't do anything with their account management strategy. They don't have, number one, they don't have an account management strategy. But number two, their existing clients just sit there until it comes a renewal, until it comes the time to do something else. So again, in that scenario, you'd almost be better off having an account manager rather than leaving it to the salesperson, because again, depending on how you remunerate the salespeople will then determine then whether are they going to go after new business or are they going to manage their existing clients. Because again, salespeople are coin operated, often. And so although they care about the outcome, they want to get paid.
Totally. Yeah. Very, very revenue driven is your average salesperson. I think that's really interesting. Everybody hates it when they only get contact from the salesperson or account manager when they're up for renewal. Like it's so
Yeah.
transactional again. Like it just makes you go, right, they don't really care. They're
Yeah.
just trying to cover their ass. I remember I got a job with the Queensland Chamber of Commerce when I was drastically underqualified for the role and was about 24, I think. And I remember talking to the guy, Craig Nichols was his name. Daddy's listening, but if he is, hi, Craig. He years later told me that I got the job because I was the only person in the interview who mentioned the term call cycle. And I don't know where I pulled that out of my ass from, but I came up with it and threw it out there, and that got me the job. But it made me realize the importance, right, of going, no, every 3 months or 6 months or 9 months or whatever it is, based on the value and the requirements of the client, you have a set cadence. We've got that now with Salesforce helping us have triggers around that and implementing that soon. But yeah, it's critical, right? As part of that whole account management strategy. How many MSPs do you think would have a set call cycle strategy? No. Okay,
No, I'm
shaking your
shaking
head.
my
Not a
head.
thing.
No.
Yeah. Okay.
I would say very, very little, very few people. And again, it may be happening, but it's not consistent. And when we talked before about
Yeah.
consistency in anything, in showing up online, in, communicating, in sharing content, in checking in, it needs to be done in a very formulated way to ensure that that client feels cared for, feels nurtured, and you build that relationship that's beyond just that contract.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right. So I got a couple of questions there for you, and then we'll leave you alone until next time. So we're going into a period of high inflation. We've got everything's either hard to get or more expensive or both, in terms of hardware at least, and in fact, good people, highly skilled people. So what opportunities, and rather than being negative and going, it was really hard, what sales or marketing opportunities do you see in this period for people to get ahead, or for businesses, MSPs specifically, to get ahead?
Oh, that is a great question. I think with regard, so are we talking about people and business? We're gonna.
Look, well, let's depending on which answer you've got the best response to, or question you got the best response to, let's do that.
Okay, which question? Okay, I'm going to say people because I think there's a lot more to talk about, and I think that this is the biggest challenge. I think with regards to kit and pricing of kits and hardware, whatever you want to call it, we can figure that bit out, and everybody's experiencing that. So if you can find a great supplier or a different distributor that can help you get there quicker, then absolutely. There's another alternative, then maybe potentially look at that. So that would be my short
Cool.
answer to
Park
that
that.
one. We'll park that.
People.
With regards to people, is that I guess really like the advice for the people that are actually out there looking for jobs or potentially considering looking would be do due diligence. Make sure you're signing up with somebody that is going to support you and is going to help you progress to that next level. For MSPs, which I know is the main question for, would be around finding somebody that they don't necessarily have to be in the IT industry. And so this is, a common question that I get asked about. I've got people that have come in that, these are great salespeople, but they've got no tech experience, so we didn't hire them. But actually, you don't need tech experience to be a great technical salesperson. The best salespeople in tech don't have that deep technical knowledge. And you may not agree with me on that, but the reason why I say that is that it's about outcomes. And so when I mentioned right at the beginning about how I drove my success, which was simplifying technology. So if we can deliver training to these new salespeople coming in from retail, from real estate, from recruitment, wherever they're coming in from, as long as they've got the drive and they've got the nous to be able to take on a role, and then they've got the resiliency to take on a role like this, then hire them and train them. Because if you can train them in the tech, in who it is, tech at high level of the problems that they solve and the outcomes we can generate, but you can introduce them to the market and introduce them to the different vendors and products and services that you sell and the types of clients that you solve problems for, you will have a much stronger sales force than trying to poach and steal people from other companies that are just average. Because right now we don't actually know how good people are because it's so hard to see because their numbers are increasing. But is that because the demand is there? Is that because it's people need it and they've got the money there? Or is it because they're a good salesperson? Is it because they believe in what it is that they're selling and because they can solve a problem? So really understanding that and knowing that if you're paying based on, if you're hiring somebody based on how much they want to be paid, what happens if somebody else comes down 3 months later and says, I'll pay you 10 grand more? Are you going to lose them at that point? So really doing your due diligence, and this is what I mean on both sides, but always open your mind and the opportunities to other salespeople that are not in the industry, because you can train anybody. I've trained people that have made milkshakes that have gone into tech. There's, advertising, recruitment, you name it, you could translate that into a technical sales support role.
Yeah, I think I've seen sales done extremely well by people who have come from the systems admin side, where they're very skilled and they can translate, they understand the issues, and they can actually do things like demos really well. But to your point, I agree. I've seen people who have no real hands-on skill whatsoever or any real deep understanding of the tech space, but they are good connectors. They can either connect people with people. So whether that's people inside their organization, they go, this person is going to be able to help me answer this problem for this person, so I bring them together, or this other vendor has a really good solution, I'm going to introduce them. Essentially being able to look at people and go, I have listened, I understand your problem, I don't have the answer, I really don't understand it at a deep level, but I know who will. It's about that they need to be one of the two, in my view, either a really good connector or pretty cluey.
Yeah.
But both can work.
Yeah, exactly. And I think with that, I mean, like one of the pictures I draw a lot is that I draw the salesperson in this circle of another circle, and I say that you're the you're the center of the cog. And if you pull in a technical resource to explain how 3CX works, or to provide a demo, or provide a trial, and then off you go again. And then I'm going to pull somebody else in who's going to come in and talk to you about another area of your business or another way that we can support. Then I'm going to pull in the project manager who's going to oversee this project. Hi, this is Dave. Introduce him, talk about some of the key things. But if you become that connector, exactly as you said, I love the word connector, because you're connecting people or you're connecting outcomes to problems. And so whatever that may be, if you always, a salesperson, get them to sit inside that cog, they will always be successful if they're pulling in the right people. They should never go from start to finish with not including another person. That's not proper English, but they should always, bring somebody in that adds value to that conversation, not just leave it to them to be like, I know everything, I'm going to talk you through it all. Because as you build in more trust with every single person across there, but you just manage that as a salesperson. And, again, going back to when I knew nothing about, I didn't think servers were real things like back then, genuinely. And I probably shouldn't be saying this like recorded, but genuinely didn't think servers were real, because we talked about the cloud, and I know the cloud's not up there, just to be very clear. But I didn't imagine what I saw when I went to a data center. I didn't imagine all of that. And so when I spoke then to business owners, and we dealt with some of the largest companies, e-commerce companies in Europe, and they would come and be like, but how are we going to deliver this, this complex platform based on what you're talking about? And I'm like, right, well, let me bring in Darren, and Darren's going to talk to you about this. And I'm going to bring in Rob, and Rob specialized with this other client. And so he tells that story. And altogether, we've now spoken to 15 people that have added their own little bit, examples, scenarios, knowledge and skill set. And that client's like, hell yeah, I want to work with these people, because we've delivered it in that way that we all care and we're all passionate, but we've all got our own passions and our own skill sets around there. So bring all that in, and we're able to do that across, that sounds like a lot of work, but, we're talking about across 2 or 3 meetings, and we're talking about half an hour here, an hour here, a 20-minute demo here, and a check-in from Dave as well as Harriet. It means we can really pull that in and show that this is what you're buying into, is not just the technology, but the family of support that you've got around you.
That's super true, and also goes to the point that you need people-friendly pre-sales tech types that aren't scared of in-person interactions and can communicate effectively. There's a million more things I want to talk to you about. You touched on how we are effective in meetings or in-person interactions. There's pricing, how to convey pricing increases or at least demonstrate value. There's social proof. I'd love to go through all of that stuff with you, and we will definitely get you back as long as you haven't hated this. But I will ask you one last question to finish up today, which is, and I'm going to ask this to a lot of guests from now on so we can do some sort of cool supercut at some future point. But what one thing, if done well, does more to drive profitable growth than any other for MSPs?
Profitable growth for MSPs. I am going to say a strong vendor relationship. And Would you like me to elaborate on that, or is that
Please.
just
Absolutely no. We need more.
leave?
Yeah. See ya. No explanation.
Exactly. Okay, so vendor relationships, and the reason why I say that is that if you're working with vendors where you've got the opportunity to add in margin and add in other services, that's where you can add the most back into your business. And the reason for that is that if you can sell one product or service and you add on your margin, if you can add in extra services around that, which are your own, that again differentiate you and set you apart from the rest and deliver that service, you'll also then start to get further kickbacks from your vendors. You'll get marketing funding back from vendors. You'll get more buy-in and more support from them. You can utilize their technical team rather than having to grow your own. So this
their marketing team,
exactly everything. So anything that you can get from vendors and those distributors is really where you can start to increase that profitability with each and every sale that you do when it includes that product or service.
Nice. Glad you didn't drop the mic and leave. That was a good explanation. That's awesome. Thanks, Harriet. Great chat. Definitely can get you back. We'll maybe structure that in a few weeks after Easter, that kind of thing, if you're keen and around.
Yeah.
Appreciate you coming in.
Amazing. Thanks for having me.
And that'll do us for today. We'll definitely get Harriet back at some future point to talk about account management, social proof, meeting etiquette, all sorts of other things that I think we could have covered today, but I didn't want to keep it going for too long. We'll be back again next week. In the interim, if you would like to provide any feedback, ask any questions, you can reach me on Brendan or via Brendan at insightsasaservice.fm, or you can reach myself or Harriet. That's HARRIET MELLOR on LinkedIn. If you got any questions as a follow-up to this episode. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.